I'm a massive football fan and I'm a massive NFL fan. And there was a period of time where the NFL draft was a peak viewing experience for me. So the NFL draft just wrapped up. And one of the interesting storylines in the NFL draft was the case of Shadur Sanders and his slide down the draft boards. At various points after the college football season had wrapped up, there were conversations about Shadur Sanders being a top 5 pick. And then something changed. And you had anonymous reporting coming out from various assistant GMs or whatnot that pointed to his attitude and his interview style, which some quoted as being one of the worst interviews that they've seen. And what's interesting about that is that it is layered on top of his dad, Deion Sanders, saying there are certain teams that I will not want him to play for. And what's interesting about that is from an optics perspective, here you have a quarterback who turned around one college football program and then went to Colorado and turned around another college football program. And his dad did the same thing. So this is the definition of Black excellence at play. And what's interesting is that the critiques that are levied at Shadur Sanders have nothing to do with really anything that he's done on the field. It has to do with optics. These NFL owners and GMs are using veiled language, make the point that he is somehow entitled or spoiled or not committed to the game. And when you think about it from a historical perspective, there's nothing that Shadur Sanders said or did that's any different from what the Mannings have done when they engineered Eli Manning to land at the Giants instead of the Chargers. There's nothing different with what Shadur Sanders and his group said that's different from what John Elway did when Elway didn't want to get drafted by the Colts. What's the difference? The difference is that there is a clear difference in the melanin content between the examples that I gave you. When white athletes and white families say that they're going to call their shot, it's called ambition. But when you see the same thing happen by Black or brown athletes, it's entitlement. When you see white athletes be brash and bold and confident, that's labeled as leadership. When you see the same thing happen from Black and brown athletes, that's labeled as ghetto or thuggish behavior. And that is what you're seeing here. The actions of Shadur Sanders and Deion Sanders and their entire group are no different than what you've seen from other white athletes. And yet you saw this athlete, who is one of the top-rated college football prospects, slide down the draft boards in an effort to, quote unquote, humble him and teach him a lesson. And that is the perfect illustration of how white supremacy and white fragility came into play to try to ruin the prospects of an elite Black athlete. I know I'm going to get heat for saying it, but that's exactly what happened. This is one of the biggest double standards in history. And this is just another example of the NFL up to their games. They can ruin somebody's career for taking a knee, and yet they can look the other way and completely ignore when white athletes wear the hats and simp for a rapist and a felon. That is a double standard that should not be tolerated going forward. The NFL only exists because of the excellence that their Black athletes bring forward. And in fact, you can apply that to any number of professional sports leagues. They would not exist were it not for the athletes in their league, and specifically the Black athletes in their league. And yet, what do you see? The coaches are mostly white, the GMs are mostly white, the owners are mostly white. And whenever things like the Shadur Sanders situation happens in these leagues, what do you hear from the majority white coaches, majority white GMs, majority white ownership? Why do you people always bring up the race card? Before you comment and before you get all up in your feelings, ask yourself, why are we okay with these double standards? Why are we not willing to confront these things in order to move forward? And until these things are confronted at all levels of society, we'll still be having the same arguments over and over again.